Again, we want to welcome everybody tonight. My name is Charlene Margot. I'm co-founder of nonprofit The Parent Venture, and we're delighted to have with us tonight author Leora Tanenbaum, who's going to be talking to you about Sexy Selfie Nation, changing the narrative around girls' body image. Take it away, Leora.
Thank you so much, Charlene. Everybody, thank you for being here. Bear with me. I'm going to share my screen. Hello, everybody. I hope your day has been going well. And for the next hour, we will be talking about changing the narrative around girls' body image. And I will be sharing with you the research I did for my most recent book that Charlene was telling you about, called Sexy Selfie Nation, Standing Up for Yourself in Today's Toxic Sexist Culture. So I know Charlene already told you a little bit about me. I am an expert on slut shaming. I will talk more deeply in a few minutes about what the term slut shaming means, if you're not familiar with it. But for now, the quick definition is judging, shaming, and regulating a girl or woman for being inappropriately sexual. As Charlene said, I'm the author of 6 books. I'm regularly quoted and cited in news stories, legal and academic journals, across social media platforms, and so on. Who turns to me for my expertise? Young people, parents, educators, lawyers. I've been an expert witness on cases involving sexual harassment, and journalists covering gender and sexuality issues. And I have been tracking, researching, and writing about slut shaming for 30 years, since the mid-1990s. And so how did I get started? People always want to know, how does somebody become an expert in slut shaming? It's a really good question. So I want to go back to the beginning of my story. I think that will help you understand my approach. So you'll know where I'm coming from, what led me to this research, and why I am so invested in this project. So here I am in the mid-1980s when I was in high school, and I was labeled a slut when I was in the 9th grade. And this is something I've written about. And 10 years after that happened, and if you are interested in my story, you can find it in my first book, which came out in 1999, Slut Growing Up Female with a Bad Reputation. But 10 years after I had this experience, I coined the term slut bashing, which was the precursor. It morphed into slut shaming. Back then, we did not have this language. And not having the language meant it was hard, if not impossible, for me and for so many other people who had experienced it to make sense of our experience. The language is such an important tool, but we didn't have that language at the time. So my first book on this, which came out in 1999, the book Slut, I demonstrated in that book that most students who were labeled sluts were either not sexually active at the time that they acquired their reputation, or if they were sexually active, they were not any more so than any of their peers. And in 1999, that was considered very surprising and shocking. But I hope it does not surprise or shock any of you here tonight. And then over the years, I have done updates on my research and have just been continuing to track the phenomenon of slut shaming. So 10 years ago in 2015, so much changed with the rise of the World Wide Web and smartphones and social media. None of that, of course, existed, or certainly the web didn't exist in the way we have it now back in 1999. So I updated my research for the book, I'm Not a Slut, Slut Shaming in the Age of the Internet. And then my most recent book just continues, throughout time to see how things have changed. So I'm going to share my latest research with you in a moment, but first I'd like to pause. And just for a few moments, I'd like all of us to reflect on our own experiences. Now, I cannot see the chat or Q&A. And you certainly do not have to put anything in writing if you don't feel comfortable doing so, but I do have a few questions for you to think about. So the first one is you can see on the screen. If you identify or present as feminine, have you ever been told that either your clothes are inappropriate or that your selfies are inappropriate by anybody, a parent, another family member, a teacher, even a stranger? Has anybody ever said this to you? And if yes, just think for a moment about how you felt at the moment. And then now, maybe if this happened a while ago, when you think back about how that interaction went, how do you feel about that now? Something to think about: if you ever were sexually harassed, verbally or physically, or if you were sexually assaulted, were you ever told that you were the one to blame because of what you were wearing? So I would just like to sit with that for a moment and have you think about that. Another question to think about: have you ever told or wanted to tell your daughter or the young woman or girl in your life, if not your daughter, that she needs to change her outfit because you worried that her outfit was too revealing? If that has ever occurred, think about how that interaction went. I just would like you to hold these memories and ideas and thoughts in your head as I continue and share my research, because it will be helpful for you to assimilate all of these ideas. So why am I raising these issues with you? I have found that we cannot make sense of body image until we fully grasp the reality of non-consensual sexualization, which means being sexualized against our will. I'm going to use this language of non-consensual sexualization many times during my presentation. That is the language that I have been using, and you will see why in a moment. Okay, sorry about that. Here we go. Okay, why did I do this research in the first place? So I started this particular project that led to Sexy Selfie Nation because I was being deluged with messages from parents who were panicked about their daughter's so-called inappropriate clothing and selfies. And you all know, as I've shared, I'm known as an expert on slut shaming. And so a lot of parents figured I could help advise them on what they should tell their daughters about how their daughters should dress without making their daughters feel ashamed. So essentially, what it boiled down to was lots of parents asking me how they should talk to their daughters in a way that wouldn't slut shame their daughters, but kind of the parents wanted to slut shame their daughters, if I may say so. So one mom said to me, "You're a feminist. Aren't you horrified that so many young women are objectifying themselves?" And another mom direct messaged me, "I keep telling my daughter to change her outfit and delete her bikini selfies, but she won't listen. What should I do?" And I realized that the only way that I would be able to help these parents was if I spoke to their daughters and to young women at large directly. Because how else would I know how to give an answer that would be helpful? And one thing led to another, and I kind of went down a rabbit hole, and I ended up spending 6 years talking to young women and non-binary people, ages 14 to 30, all in the United States. And I created a safe space for them to open up to me about their decision making about their clothes and their selfies. So that was how this whole project began. And okay, what did I learn? I learned that young women are sexualized against their will all the time, regardless of their choices of what to wear and what to post on their social media. And they are reclaiming control by standing up for themselves and against non-consensual, it's hard to say, sexualization. And again, young people said to me that sexy doesn't mean to them what it might mean to their parents and their teachers. And to them, sexy does not mean wanting to have sex, inviting sex. And it's a really interesting kind of miscommunication between the generations. When young women are embracing a sexualized aesthetic or post photographs that we see as sexualized, that is not necessarily how they are seeing it. They are doing this to feel a sense of control and ownership. Those are words they used again and again with me because they exist in a world where they have little to no control over their own image. So I just want to add a little more nuance to what I have here on the slide. So of these girls and women and non-binary young people, ages 14 to 30, whom I spoke with, who, by the way, included those who are white, Black, Asian American, and Latina, they told me that they like to dress in ways they find comfortable. Comfortable was another word they kept using with me. Which was very interesting to me. And I learned that the word comfortable has different meanings to different people. And I had a very fixed idea of what comfortable meant. To me, comfortable meant wearing something soft like fleece or cashmere or, combed cotton. But comfortable to the people I spoke with meant comfortable in a more psychic way, and feeling psychologically safe. So that was very eye-opening to me. But over and over again, they said they just want to feel comfortable. And for them, dressing in ways that their parents and teachers may think of as sexy and posting selfies, again, that their parents and teachers think of as sexy, they just don't see it that way. And it became clear to me that parents and teachers who are anxious about the young women in their lives looking quote unquote inappropriate really should be redirecting their concern. And it became clear that the real problem, which I will show you, is not what the young people are wearing. The real problem is the rampant sexual objectification and violation of bodily autonomy that young people are facing every day. And all of this ties into body image. So I want to go back to that word slut shaming again, because it is the framing that I use for all of my work. So if you are already familiar with this, that's great. But I know that there are many parents who may not be familiar with the concept of slut shaming. And it is important to understand the experiences of girls and young women today. It really is important to understand this concept. So the slut stereotype, in a nutshell, in North America, this is a stereotype that typically targets self-identified or self-presenting girls or women who violate white feminine norms, and who are believed to exercise sexual agency. So this girl or woman might be a woman of color, regarded as hypersexual because of assumptions of white supremacy, or she may be white and is perceived as sexually out of control, so-called low class or attention seeking. This racial dimension is really important when understanding the dynamics of slut shaming, because historically in the United States, the idea of being good, if you're a woman, good femininity, has been understood by white people as white femininity, which has historically been aligned with being minimally sexual and definitely not sexual outside of marriage. So under this rubric of white supremacy, Girls and women of color could never achieve the status of good femininity because they were not white. And even today, we all carry with us the residue of this historical way of thinking about femininity, and it seeps into our mindset, even if we are not consciously aware of it. Many people continue unconsciously to regard good femininity as both white and minimally sexual. So I really want to underscore that. I also want to point out, as I'm sure you can see on the slide, that I've put the words regarded and perceived in red font. That's because I want to call your attention to these very key words that this whole phenomenon is so subjective and open to interpretation and fluid, and it's all about perception. There is no definition of being too sexual or inappropriately sexual, right? It all depends on one person or a group of people's perception of others. So that is the slut stereotype. And to repeat what slut shaming is, just to drill down a little bit more now, it is the judging, shaming, and regulating of a girl or woman for being inappropriately sexual and deviating from normative white femininity. It is a tool of social control rooted in sexism and racism. Okay, why does any of this matter? And I'll share with you when I started writing about slut shaming in 1999. Actually, I started earlier than that in 1995, actually. I've been doing this a very long time, 30 years. Um, Back then, many people would say to me, Leora, okay, it's a really ugly insult. I get it, but so what? Like, insults are bad, insults are hurtful, but yeah, it's just another insult. So, first of all, we should never insult anybody over anything ever. So, I mean, I think we can all agree on that. But in addition, I believe that the word slut and all the synonyms for slut are particularly pernicious because they have consequences with public policy. And I don't know if you can read on the slide. I know the font might be a little bit small, but I've put in some of the synonyms that are common for the word slut. So, of course, there's the word hoe, and then I don't know if you've heard the word thought, T-H-O-T. It is an acronym for that hoe over there, and that is also used. There are unfortunately many synonyms, but those are some of the more popular ones. So when I say that this term and this mindset has an impact on public policy, just to bring out three important areas that we should be aware of: sexual harassment, sexual assault, and reproductive health care. With sexual harassment and sexual assault, victims are very often slut shamed, told that they were asking for it. This shifts the blame away from perpetrators, who are often positioned as innocent and blameless, whereas victims who are positioned as sluts are seen as provocateurs and liars, sometimes both at the same time, which makes no sense, but none of this truly makes sense. The focus should always be on the perpetrator, not on the victim, and there should never be slut shaming of victims. And we also see with birth control and abortion that girls and women seeking reproductive and sexual health care very often are stigmatized and shamed. They face judgment rather than receiving the compassionate health care that they deserve. So slut shaming truly does matter. It is not just an insult. Okay, now that I've laid that framework of slut shaming, I'm going to drill down a little bit and talk about three forms of non-consensual sexualization that I heard about again and again when I was speaking with young people ages 14 to 30. And what they told me about were: one, gendered dress coding, particularly in schools. I'm actually going to spend the bulk of the rest of my presentation talking about dress coding, because it affects so many young people. So that's number one. Number two is victim blaming after assault and harassment. And number three is image-based sexual abuse, popularly known as revenge porn and sexually explicit deepfakes. So that is what I will be getting into right now. Okay, the first form of non-consensual sexualization, gendered dress coding. 93% of public middle and high schools in the United States have dress codes. And many of these dress codes are gendered, meaning they have different rules depending on your gender, with girls typically penalized for revealing too much skin. Again, it's also subjective. So what are some of the common restrictions of these gender dress codes? That girls are prohibited from wearing tight pants, or if they're wearing leggings, they need to wear a long sort of tunic length top. They can't wear leggings with a short top. That's a very common one. Another common restriction is that skirts or shorts may not be shorter than fingertip length when you're standing, where your fingertips fall on your thighs. That's called the fingertip rule. A lot of schools prohibit crop tops or tops that expose the shoulders, or even bra straps. You know, I know a lot of us will wear a top where we intentionally are showing our bra strap, but sometimes it's an accident. And sometimes, like, you're leaning over or whatever, and your bra strap gets exposed. I heard from many girls who would get in trouble even for that, even when they weren't even trying to expose their bra strap. And the stated rationale that so many school districts have, often in writing, is that revealing clothes are a distraction from learning. Okay, but who is really being distracted here? That is the question that we will be discussing. So there are lots of problems with gendered dress codes. One is that girls' bodies become the focus of attention, which is paradoxical, because the administrators who put into place these dress codes are actually trying to take girls' bodies out of the equation. But that is not how it works in reality. In reality, when you attempt to cover girls' bodies and hide their bodies and their sexuality, that actually makes their bodies the center of attention. Why? Because as a girl, you're walking into the classroom, you're walking into the school building, and if there is a dress code, that means teachers and administrators are looking you up and down to see if you are compliant or not. All of a sudden, your body is the focus of attention, and girls know it. Two, girls' bodies are regarded as a problem to be solved. If you are being looked up and down, that means there's something wrong, and we need to deal with this problem. By the way, some schools have and enforce dress codes for girls as young as kindergarten age. So this is happening before girls even have any awareness of themselves as sexual at all. And what is happening is this awareness becomes imposed on them much earlier than they would develop on their own organically. Okay, number three is the racist implications. According to the National Women's Law Center, Black girls are dress coded far more often than other girls. And this goes back to the idea that slut shaming is inseparable from white supremacy. White girls are dress coded too, but the statistics show that Black girls and other girls of color are dress coded more. And finally, we have to address the psychological toll. That daily assessment of your body by teachers and administrators does take a toll on your self-perception and your body image. All right, here is a really interesting set of photos. I want you to look at Riley O'Keefe, the student depicted here on the right and the left. Riley is now in college. I think she's now 18 or 19, but I spoke with her when she was 16. The photo on the left is the one that she submitted to her high school yearbook. The photo on the right is the one that ended up in her yearbook. And you can see that the school doctored the photo and removed her cleavage by adding an extra fake layer of black fabric over her chest. And you know how it is when the yearbooks come out. Riley, it was the last day of school. Riley and all her friends were all excited. They went to go pick up their yearbooks. And of course, the first thing they do is they flip to the page where their photo is. And Riley gets to her photo, and it took her a moment to figure out what happened. She looked at it and she knew it was not what she submitted, but she couldn't quite figure out why, like what the difference was. Then all of a sudden she realized it and she was like, oh my God. And then all of her girlfriends, so many of them, the same thing happened. I mean, they were not all wearing the exact same top, but anybody who even had any hint of showing their bust at all or the shape of their bust at all, those photos got doctored. And over 40 girls had their photos doctored in their yearbook. This is in Southern Florida. So here you can see the quote. This is what Riley said to me. When they put those black boxes over our chests in the yearbook, it became clear that the dress code was not really an issue with clothing. It was a problem with how the school district views women's bodies and how the world views women's bodies. They were sexualizing us even though we're still children. Well said, Riley. So you have heard now how young people, girls and women, and non-binary students are experiencing these dress codes. But I want to now pivot and talk about the other side, how parents feel, because many parents like dress codes and support them. I mean, they feel bad for their daughters, but a lot of parents do see some merit in dress codes. And there were two concerns that I heard from parents regarding when their daughter, in the opinion of the parent, was dressing in a way that they thought was too revealing, and why they supported dress codes. So concern number one was, young women, when they wear clothes that are so-called inappropriate or so-called too revealing, they're elevating their risk of sexual harassment and assault. So I am a parent too, and I get it. We all want to protect our young people. We do not want them to do anything where they're placing themselves at risk. I absolutely have empathy and understanding about that protective impulse. But it is simply incorrect to say that because of what you're wearing, you are elevating your risk of harassment or assault. It is just simply false. Perpetrators generally are not strangers to the victim. 93% of sexual assault perpetrators know their victim. The victim knows the attacker. Okay, this is according to RAINN, the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. 59% are acquaintances and 34% are family members. Only 7% are strangers. It's absolutely horrifying and terrifying. Why am I raising this issue? It is directly relevant. This shows that the people who harass and assault are not choosing their victim based on their clothing. In most cases, they have been grooming the victim for quite some time, and they take action when there's an opportunity. It has nothing to do with what you are wearing. So honestly, at the end of this presentation, if you forget everything else I say, this is the one thing that I want you to remember. The idea that covering up makes a person immune from sexual harassment or assault is simply not true. It's ludicrous. I've included here a statistic regarding married Orthodox Jewish women. This might seem a little bit random, but I come from an Orthodox Jewish background, so this one really spoke to me, so I wanted to share it with you as well. This is a demographic of women who cover themselves up to the hilt. They'll often be wearing tops that even cover to the top of their neck. So they are not wearing anything that by any stretch of the imagination could be considered revealing. And yet, even within this population, 26% reported having been sexually abused. And quite frankly, it wouldn't shock me if the actual statistic were much higher than that. The second concern that I hear from parents about their daughters' clothing is that if their daughters wear clothes that the parents believe are too revealing, that they will not be taken seriously. So I actually have a little bit more empathy for this argument. I get it. I still think it's flawed. I don't have data to prove it's flawed. So bear with me. I do have some case studies that are food for thought about why I think this is a flawed argument. And the two case studies are two women who have testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee about prospective U.S. Supreme Court justices. Anita Hill, back in 1991, and then more recently, Christine Blasey Ford in 2018. Both Anita Hill and Christine Blasey Ford are known for dressing in a particularly conservative manner. That's their aesthetic, right? If you've ever seen photos of either or both of them, they are not the type to wear clothes that reveal their body at all. And yet, both Anita Hill and Christine Blasey Ford were absolutely trashed and slut-shamed in the most horrific ways, in such a public way, both times that they testified. Anita Hill testified that Clarence Thomas, again, this was before he was voted in to become a Supreme Court justice when he was prospective. She testified that he had sexually harassed her when the two of them worked at the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And then Christine Blasey Ford testified that Brett Kavanaugh sexually assaulted her when they were teenagers in high school. And then, of course, as we know, both men were voted on and are now Supreme Court justices. So conservative clothing did not protect these women's credibility. Again, the problem is not what women wear, it is how society views girls and women, and especially in these cases, women who speak truth to power. I would even go so far as to say that the myth that if you cover up, you're more safe actually does the opposite, that it actually makes women less safe. And I know this is counterintuitive, but bear with me. I think this logic actually is clear and as devastating. This mindset normalizes the belief that what a woman looks like dictates how she should be treated. It reinforces the idea that wearing revealing clothes means that you are asking for it. This mindset protects perpetrators, not victims, and girls know it. They know it. And this mindset influences how girls feel about their bodies, their clothes, their appearance, and their identities. Okay, I gave you a lot to think about regarding dress coding. I'm now going to spend a moment talking about the two other forms of non-consensual sexualization that young people talk to me about again and again. So the second form is victim blaming after sexual assault and harassment. I know I've said this now probably 3 or 4 times. I'm going to repeat it again. Forgive the repetition. It's just too important. There is no outfit that can protect a potential victim. It doesn't matter what you are wearing. I will add, aside from that very key point, that when a victim survivor of harassment or assault is blamed for having provoked or caused the harassment or assault, that is another form of being sexualized against your will, because it means that people are assigning a sexual identity or sexual, framing to somebody who may not have thought about herself as a sexual being at all. And so what it does is it leads young people to formulate an identity as sexual, even when they're not developmentally ready. And on their own might not have gotten to that point for quite some time. It warps how young people are thinking about their bodies and themselves. And the third form of non-consensual sexualization I want to talk about is what activists call image-based sexual abuse, IBSA. And I'm going to talk about two types, popularly known as revenge porn and sexually explicit deepfakes. Activists do not like these terms. So I know that this is the language most of us are familiar with and conversant with. I do ask that you, when talking about it, use the term IBSA, image-based sexual abuse. So you'll see here a photo of the actress Jennifer Lawrence. Some of you might remember back in 2014, she had private nude photos stolen from her when her phone, or I think it was the iCloud, was hacked. And for many of us, again, back in 2014, that might have been the first time we even became aware of this being something that happens. It is when your private, so IBSA is when your private, intimate images are distributed, often publicly, without your consent. What happened to Jennifer Lawrence? 90% of IBSA victims are women. And sometimes these images are not only shared like among a friend group, they often can be sold and are sold to exploitative websites like Pornhub. There are a lot of horrible sites similar to Pornhub. That's the one that you might be most familiar with, but there are plenty of similar ones out there, unfortunately. And you will see, this will not surprise you because of the theme we've been talking about tonight, who gets blamed with IBSA involving real images, as opposed to deepfakes, which I'll get to in a moment. It's almost always the victims who are blamed. They shouldn't have been taking the pictures. Why did they take the picture? Why did they share the picture? It's their own fault. Now, for many of us who are in midlife, the idea of taking and sharing intimate images, you're taking the images in the first place and sharing them with a partner, this may strike us as foolish or problematic behavior. And there is, for many people, a generational divide. If you feel this way, I do ask you to reorient yourself and meet the young people in your life where they are, because for them, this has become normal behavior. And whether you agree with that or not, the main problem is taking or sharing these images shouldn't be the problem. The person who takes and shares the images consensually should not be having a finger pointed at them. The real problem is the person who shares and distributes them non-consensually. So the second type of IBSA, deepfakes or synthetic images. I have a picture of Taylor Swift. You may recall, I think it was about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, she was victimized when somebody created sexually explicit deepfakes and then shared them on, I think X was still Twitter at the time. I can't recall, X or Twitter. And then those images were downloaded by millions of people. All right. So if you're not familiar, what am I talking about? This is when you digitally attach an image of a real person's face onto somebody else, an image of somebody else's body. And that could be an image or a video of a real person or a synthetic image. So deepfakes can be, again, still images or video. And you can, it's very easy to digitally attach anybody's face onto a video or image of sexual activity, right? There could be deep fakes out there of some of you watching me right now. You might not even know it. There are apps, some of you may be familiar with this. There are apps called nudifier apps, or sometimes they're called nudification apps. They enable anybody, even kids. You do not even have to be tech savvy at all, but you can take the real image of a minor or any non-consenting person of any age, an adult, and essentially remove their clothes but keep their face. Deepfakes can look totally real and authentic, and they're getting better at looking real and authentic. And the problem is, once you see a sexually explicit deepfake, it becomes embedded in your memory bank, and it influences the way you view the person whose face is depicted, even if you know intellectually that the image is fake. It just scrambles with our brains. And as with real images of IBSA, deepfakes also are sold to porn sites and can and do ruin people's lives. I have this statistic that 40% of students know of a sexually explicit deepfake image depicting someone at their school. To be honest, that 40% statistic is from 2 years ago. I don't have a more recent statistic, but I would bet anything that it is significantly higher in 2025. Activists call these deepfakes digital rape. And I think that is a very good, apt description. It captures the violation and harm inflicted on victims without their consent. So what are young people telling me about existing within this universe of wall-to-wall non-consensual sexualization? Again and again, they told me that they just want a sense of control. They want a sense of agency because they feel that they have no agency because of all these forms of lacking consent. So here are some examples of things people said. If I'm going to be sexualized, no matter what I wear, I might as well wear what makes me feel good. At least then I'm in control. And then remember, I was telling you a few minutes ago about the word comfort and what comfortable means to people of different generations. So I kept hearing that. I want to be comfortable with my clothes. That should be selfies, not sexies. Excuse the typo. It's about what I wear, what I post, how I present myself. And then again, I'm not trying to get sexual attention. I like looking good, but that doesn't mean it's about sex. Here are just some questions for us all to think about. There are no easy answers, but it's good to just ruminate on these. How can we support young women's bodily autonomy? What would it look like to hold perpetrators accountable instead of treating girls and young women as potential victims who need to cover up? How do racism and white supremacy shape who gets labeled a slut? And what messages are we sending when we tell girls their bodies are problems to be solved? And how does this messaging impact their self-worth? So let's all think about these, but I know that you're here because you want to know things on a practical level. It's good to have the thoughts, but also we want to know what to do, right? What can we do practically to support our young women so that they feel good about their bodies and identities? And what I want to leave you with is to pay attention to the language that you use. Please do not say, ever, you look like a slut. You can't go out looking like that. You need to delete that post. You look like you're asking for it. You're too big, you're too fat, you're too busty, you're too curvy to wear that. Please don't say these things. Okay, maybe you have said these things in the past. We're all human, we're all flawed. And when we have that protective impulse, sometimes we say things we shouldn't say. So I don't want you to beat yourself up too much. Don't beat yourself up at all, frankly. If you have said any of these things in the past, today is the first day of the rest of your life. On the next slide, I'm going to give you alternative language. If you have said something like this, or even these exact words to any of the young people in your life, I do ask that you think about having a conversation in which you apologize. And I can tell you, as I said, I have been doing this research now for 30 years, which is amazing when I think about it. And over the years, I have spoken with thousands of people who have been slut shamed. And some of the most heartbreaking stories are adult women who have told me that they will never forget a parent or other family member years and years and years before calling them a slut or a hoe. They never forget that. So please don't use this language. And if you have, I would ask you to consider apologizing. Okay. And on the next slide, I'm going to share with you the language that you should consider using. Try saying, "It makes me happy to see that you like your body and are proud of it. Don't let anyone make you feel ashamed because you have no reason to feel that way." Or you could say, "The reason I'm uncomfortable with your outfit is that I want people to value you for the kind, thoughtful, and accomplished person you are, not for your body." Or you could say, "You look fantastic. But because of sexism and racism, a lot of people may not agree. Are you prepared to handle some ugly reactions? Remember, you don't deserve them." You could say, "Are you wearing this because you want to or because your friends expect you to? If you're not comfortable with this, it's okay to go and change." And no matter what, really important to say, even though we disagree, I still love you. The main thing with the language is you want your young person to feel good about her body. So you want to make sure that whatever words you choose, you are not expressing judgment about her as a person. If you have a need, a desire to communicate an expression of judgment, make sure that the judgment is not of her, that the judgment is about the toxic, sexist culture that she is living in and navigating, because she's doing her best to get through it. And we just have to always remember what it is that we're judging. And it is not our young people, it is what they are dealing with. So this is actually the end of my presentation. I know that Charlene is going to open it up for Q&A, but I just wanted to share with you. So yes, I have this book, but I also have two products that I am very happy to gift to you, to give you for free, if you email me directly. I have a flyer that's called Say This, Not That. It has some of the examples I just shared with you a minute ago about what not to say and what to say instead. And I have some more examples. And then I also have a 43-page workbook that you can either complete on your own, or your young person can complete on their own, or you can do it together. So these are both companions to Sexy Selfie Nation. And again, if you reach out to me, I am happy to share these with you as my gift to you for coming along on this ride with me today. So thank you so much. I will stop sharing in a moment. I'll just leave it on for another second if you wanted to jot down my info. And then I know, Charlene, we have a few minutes, right?
We do. Thank you, Leora. That was really incredible. And parents, I just finished reading this book. It is amazing. Not just thought-provoking and interesting, but so well written. It just, your storytelling carries your mission. Leora, it's a beautiful book. So we have some, as you can imagine, some really good questions. And I want to start out with one that's kind of basic because, we try to think of the parent venture as bringing education to families that is upstream, right? Meaning preventative, that we really want to give parents education and strategies before they even need them. So here's one I'd love to ask you, and that is, how can we start early conversations about body confidence so that our children feel proud and comfortable in their own skin? And I think that probably applies for girls and boys.
Oh, yeah, I love that question. Absolutely. And I think one of the themes this evening has been consent. And I don't think that there's any age that is too young to start instilling the value of consent. Actually, Charlene, if it's okay, if I may have your consent, I'd like to tell everybody watching that you and I, right before this evening's program started, we were actually talking about the issue of consent and young people and the idea that even to hug somebody, that it's good to ask first for permission. May I hug you? May I touch you? I think that that is something that you can start at very, very early ages, and we should never take for granted and assume that we can touch people. And that is a really easy and I think powerful way to teach the lesson and the value that we all deserve bodily autonomy. And we all have the ability to say no and should be given the ability to say no. And then, as our young people continue to develop and grow, when it is age appropriate, then we can bring in these other layers of the conversation. But it's just never too young to talk about consent.
I appreciate that, Leora. As the grandmother of three now little ones, I really appreciate how my children are using that, asking their 3-year-old, may I take your picture? Saying to the baby, may I have your foot? I'm going to put your socks on now. That it sounds trivial, but it's not, because it creates that culture of the little one giving consent, right?
Absolutely. And I admit freely, I was kind of late to the party in learning this message myself. I think many of us, we're all learning, we're all in a learning journey together. Um, so it's only been a few years, maybe less than a decade, where I've become more aware of the need that I can't just go in for a hug or go in for a kiss, even with a family member, that I need to ask and that I should ask and that it's important because it's also role modeling behavior. So
Exactly, exactly. We're practicing for the holidays on this one, Leora. It disappoints some grandparents, but it's very important and we have to be respectful. All right, just quickly on one of your resources, a parent is asking, what is the appropriate age for the workbook?
Oh, that is a really good question. So, for anybody who wants to see it, why don't I send it to you and you can take a look? But off the top of my head, honestly, any age. I hadn't even thought that, hadn't really thought about it. The workbook does touch on image-based sexual abuse. So if that's a conversation you're not ready to have, then maybe don't print out that part, but I think preview it, take a look and see. Um, but I had in mind certainly ages 14 and up.
Okay, all right, thank you. And one of the things everybody who's here with us, I like is that we can be honest with each other. And I think this next question is a really good one, and I respect the ask. So here we go, Leora. Writer says, for most of these things, sure. However, I could not disagree more that young girls should not be comfortable posting pictures with underwear or bras showing. It's not at all about slut shaming. It is either appropriate or inappropriate. What do you say?
So I first of all want to thank the person for putting that in the chat. Thank you. I believe that all minors should have their social media set to private. So right off the bat, and forgive me, I should have said that during the presentation. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to state it now. All minors should have their settings set to private. And the only people who should have access to their social media should be their friends and family, the people they know in real life, who they are close with. And within that cohort, if somebody wants to post a bikini selfie and they feel good about it and they don't see it as sexual, I fear that parents or teachers who themselves see the image as sexual when that's not the intent, they are projecting something onto the image. And that is something that I would like the parent or teacher to consider. And yes, have a conversation about it. Communication and language are so important. Talk about it. Find out where your young person is coming from. I mean, it so much depends on the age, but definitely those images should be set to private.
Okay. And in a similar vein, the question is, Leora, how could parents help young people critically evaluate the beauty standards, comments, and feedback that they encounter on social media. I know this is so important for parents, and they ask about it and ask about it, but the answers are hard. What do you say to that? Helping kids evaluate what they're seeing in the comments they get.
Charlene, I'm not sure if you know what the questionnaire is asking. So I'm trying to make sure I answer the right and give an answer to the correct question. Do you think the questionnaire is asking about comments where people say you look gorgeous, you look hot, or what do you
Yeah,
think the
I think
question
it's
is about?
you know, many of our kids, especially girls, are posting and hoping to get feedback. And a lot of times it's positive, sometimes it's not. Then what do you do? Like as a parent, if your child comes to you and they've gotten some really negative comment, what do you say?
Right, right. Again, I would go back to the language I was suggesting, which is all about um, affirming the value of your young person while simultaneously teaching your young person that the culture surrounding them is toxic and negative, but that they, the young person, they have inherent value. And that is the way to orient it, in my opinion.
All right, that's beautiful, and our audience agrees with you. So, Leora, we have come to the end of an amazingly thought-provoking hour. You have been so clear about your perspective, and everybody, again, I just want to share Leora's wonderful book. Um, what final words do you want to leave us with tonight?
Consent, consent, consent. That is the number one value that we need to think about with our young people. Make sure that they feel that they have, that they can control to the extent that they can, the things that they can control, because they live in a culture where so much control is taken away from them. And we, as their parents, caregivers, and educators, we need to model that value of consent for them so that they can learn it from us.
Well, thank you, Leora Tanenbaum, for all the consciousness raising tonight. We're never too old to learn new things, and you've given us a really amazing and wonderful perspective. And thank you for taking the years to talk to kids and find out what the girls are saying and communicating it to all of us. So again, thank you for a wonderful event, and to all of you for your great questions and for being with us tonight. Take care, everybody. Hope to see you again soon. Stay on and answer those couple of Zoom questions if you would. Thank you, Leora.